All right, in this video, I'm going to go over the 3 locational theories. So now we're not going to go over them all on the same day, but this is just for those that are absent that can go back and look at these. Okay, so these are locational theories. All right, now, so locational theories are just things that we use or that people use to, they'll use them to predict where a business will or should be located. Okay, so it really is all about location. Okay, so have you ever heard that phrase where they say location, location, location? Okay, well, that is something that we talk about here. Okay, location does really matter where you put your business. Okay, you want it to be in the right location so that you don't spend too much money for transportation costs, but you're not also spending a lot of money for land costs, but you also have customers coming to you. Okay, so owners will, business owners will look at factors of location to try to figure out where they want to put their business. Okay, and so there's 3 that we'll end up going over. So just know that these are all locational theories. Okay, and these are all to figure out how the owner can maximize profit. Okay, so just know, and this is kind of a given here, but owners care about the money. Okay, so how can they maximize their profits? All right, so the first model that we're going to go over is Weber. Okay, Weber's model. So it's not Weber, it's Weber. Okay, so remember, we always want to know the who, the when, and the where. Okay, so Weber, he is Germany. Okay, and he is 1868 to 1958. Okay, so remember, we always think about what's going on in the world during this time. Okay, so 1868 to 1958. All right, so think about what he's living through. Okay, so he, if we're in the 50s here, I mean, this is World War I, Great Depression. Okay, but it's in Germany, so I mean, think about, that's where, the wars actually were. So you want to think about the things that he's thinking about as well. Now, Weber's model is going to deal, or his theory, is going to deal with the basic location of manufacturing plants. So he is concerned with industry. Okay, so let's put that. Okay, so basic model for the location of manufacturing plants. Okay, so he is concerned with actual industry. Okay, where am I going to put these factories so that I can maximize my profit? Okay, now we call his model, or his theory, okay, is called least cost theory. Okay, least cost theory, that's what we call his. Okay, and so, okay, so in this case, he is worried about how to minimize cost. Okay, where am I going to put my factory so that I'm not spending a ton of money so that I can make a bigger profit? Okay, so he considers, or he really bases that on three things. Okay, transportation, labor, and agglomeration. Okay, so the first thing, transportation. Okay, so this is thinking about that the owner wants to minimize the cost of transportation. Okay, so the owner has to choose a site, okay, that is going to give the lowest possible cost to bring in raw materials to the factory, but also then when whatever the owner is making or whatever this factory is making, it's also got to be the least amount of cost to ship this finished product out to the market. Okay, so this is the way that we're going to reduce transportation costs. Where can I put my factory so it doesn't cost me a lot of money to bring in raw materials, but it also doesn't cost me a lot of money to ship out my finished products. Okay, so we want to reduce transportation costs. Okay, so let's just add lowest cost to bring in raw materials. Okay, and ship out finished product. Okay, that's what we're worried about. Excuse me, with least cost theory, with transportation costs. Okay, now the other thing, all right, remember that he's thinking about is labor. Okay, so with labor costs, if your labor costs too much money, okay, then you're going to lose profit. So where can I put my factory that is also going to be next to a cheap labor source? Okay, so there's sometimes things can give and take here. Okay, if I can find really cheap labor, but it's really far from my raw material, then I can afford to spend just a little bit more on my transportation costs. Okay, so you could save somewhere so that you could spend just a little bit more elsewhere. Okay, so for that, we can add in for labor costs that the factory, okay, can be farther out if labor is cheaper. Okay, and then remember the last thing that he's thinking about, the cost of, is something called agglomeration. Okay, so agglomeration is AGGLOMERATION. Agglomeration. Okay, so agglomeration is something that a factory will consider. It's really when you'll have a large number of businesses that will cluster together. To agglomerate means to cluster. Okay, so if you can find an area that has a lot of businesses that are clustered together or agglomerated together, okay, then maybe that might be beneficial for your business as well. Could you benefit each other if I locate next to this place? Like, for example, sometimes manufacturing plants might need office furniture. Okay, so if they're located next to an office furniture business, then they can benefit from that, and shipping costs would be cheaper, things like this. Okay, so you don't want too much. Okay, too much agglomeration can be bad because then you end up competing, and then also you're competing for space. And if you're competing for space, remember what that does to your price of land. Okay, it's going to make your price of land go up, and you don't want to be spending too much on your land, okay, because you're trying to minimize cost here. Okay, so for agglomeration, what we can put there for our little notes here is just that it's is when businesses are clustered. Okay, so let's just remember, okay, that that can be beneficial. Okay, they can benefit off of each other. Okay, but you don't want too much. Okay, because you don't want the cost of land to go up. Okay, so it's got to be that Goldilocks amount. Okay, it's got to be just right. Okay, so think about how we talked about bulk gaining and bulk reducing. Okay, that would have weight on Weber's least cost theory. Okay, so those are things to think about as well. Okay, so remember what your bulk gaining and bulk reducing terms were. Okay, so if an item is bulk gaining, okay, then that means it goes in small, but it gains weight in the manufacturing process and it's going to come out big. Okay, so if we're thinking about stuff like that, okay, so bulk gaining. Okay, if it's bulk gaining, you want to be closer to your market. Okay, so because you're going to have to think about transportation costs. Okay, so closer to market. Okay, but if it's bulk reducing, then it's the opposite of that. Okay, so if it's bulk reducing, remember it goes in big, okay, but then it comes out smaller. All right, so if it's bulk reducing, then you want to be closer to your raw material. Okay, so let's just kind of add that too. So bulk reducing. Okay, so remember bulk reducing, close to raw material. Okay, so think about how bulk reducing and bulk gaining can affect, okay, your least cost theory, how that can affect your transportation costs. Okay, that's something that you do want to consider. Okay, our next model, or our next locational theory that we need to talk about is hotelling. Okay, so hotelling is Hotellling. Okay, so hotelling is 1895 to 1973. And he's actually an economist. Okay, so hotelling is American. Okay, so he is from the U.S. Okay, so think about his dates. He's more modern. Okay, so he is definitely after World War I and II. Okay, I think this time period is really kind of when we're really trying to get the economy going, all that kind of stuff. Okay, so what he is going to focus on is something called locational interdependence. Okay, so locational interdependence. Okay, so think about, like, you know how sometimes when you see like a CVS on a corner, and then what do you see almost across the street? You'll always see like a Walgreens. Okay, so this is going to explain why we see situations like that. Okay, but in this case, I'm going to use two ice cream vendors and where they decide to locate on a beach. Okay, so this will also connect to the TED Talk video that we're going to watch over this because they use two ice cream vendors. Okay, but you can think like CVS, Walgreens. This is why they're always across the street from each other, why they're really close. Okay, so just to kind of add that here. Okay, so why two businesses locate across from each other. Okay, so if you have two ice cream vendors, okay, so here's my beach. Don't make fun of my beach. Okay, so you've got one guy that starts out over here, and he's gonna start out at the end, okay, of the beach, and then you've got another guy over here, and he's gonna start out over here with his ice cream. Okay, so let's see, we can make our ice cream a little fancy here. Okay, so you've got one guy who's going to sell ice cream at one end of the beach, and then you've got another guy who's going to sell his ice cream on the other side. Okay, and so that's going to work out just fine for a little bit. Okay, so you'll have all of these customers over on this side of the beach who are going to come to this guy over here, and they're going to buy his ice cream. Okay, and then you have all the customers over here on the other side of the beach, and they're going to go to this guy over here, and they're going to buy his ice cream. Okay, but then you've got both guys are going to start to think, well, I want to get more customers coming to me versus my competitor. Okay, so what's going to start to happen is they're going to start to move closer to the middle of the beach. Okay, so they're going to get closer, they're going to get closer, they're going to get closer to each other. And then before you know it, okay, you've got another situation where this ice cream vendor is now in the center and this ice cream vendor is now in the center. So they're going to be back to each other, okay, because they're competing for the amount of customers, okay, and they want to get as many customers as possible buying their ice cream. Okay, so now you've got on the same beach, these two guys are going to be back to back. Okay, so what that does then is it reduces both sides. Okay, so both sides will lose some customers, okay, to the other. Okay, so we'll do like that. Okay, so think about like when CVS and Walgreens are across the street from each other. They're pretty much the same store. Okay, but maybe this week Walgreens will have a sale on a gallon of milk, and the same week on the same day across the street CVS might be having a sale on toilet paper. Okay, so they'll do little things here and there to try to draw the customer to that side. Okay, so now here's the only thing with that. So there are some drawbacks. Okay, there's some negatives to this. Okay, and really the cost is to the consumer. Okay, so the problem is that costs for some, not all, but some consumers, okay, will be greater if the sellers or the businesses, so our ice cream vendors, okay, are at the center, okay, of a certain area, because then what happens is those consumers will have to travel farther. Okay, so think about it like this. All right, when they were in this situation here, okay, when they were in that situation, they could get the customers at the end of the beach. Okay, but then when this situation turns into this, okay, the customers that were way out here at the end of the beach, okay, now they are going to have to travel even further to get over to the ice cream. And so in some cases, they may lose customers because they don't want to travel that far. Okay, but if they want an ice cream, they'll have to because both ice cream vendors are now in the center. Okay, so Hotelling's model is really kind of more so about the consumer and what, and we can say that our example was CVS and Walgreens. Okay, so Hotelling's model is more so about the consumer and what the location of those businesses when they do stuff like that, locational interdependence. Okay, what that does to the consumer's travel costs. Okay, so and you can also think about like grocery stores or maybe restaurants. You might see like sometimes they'll have like a restaurant row and there'll be restaurants right next to each other. Okay, so you're drawing in customers and then maybe you offer some specials to get the customer to your side. Okay, and then our last locational theory is going to be a guy named Loosh. Okay, so Loosh is L-O, and if you want to be fancy, you can put the little umlaut on top. S-C-H, that's Loosh. Okay, so Loosh's model. Okay, so Loosh is 1967, and he's German too. A lot of these guys are German. Okay, so he is going to focus on distance. Okay, so he's similar to Weber's model in that we're looking for a place to put a factory. Okay, but he's going to be more concerned with maximizing profits, not necessarily minimizing cost. He's more concerned about maximizing profits. Okay, so for Loosh, it was all about location of a factory to maximize profit. Okay, now, so he calls, well, the thing that he's focused on then is the zone of profitability. And so for this, I'll do a little graph. Okay, so, but before I do that, so what he's considering two things. Okay, so he's going to determine the location of manufacturing plants to maximize profit. So he's considering consumer demand. So do the people want this product? Okay, and production costs. So how much is it going to cost to make this product that the people want? Okay, so like I said, he's considering two things here on where to put things. Okay, so okay, that's consumer demand. Okay, and then production cost. Okay. Now, so let's do a graph. Okay, so just a standard, we'll just like this. Okay. All right, so our x-axis is space. Okay, and our y-axis is price. Okay, and so our zone of profitability okay, is going to be right here. Okay, so this is our zone of profitability. Sorry, that's kind of smushed there. Okay, so, all right, so, and you don't need to change colors. I'm just going to change colors so you can see the two different things. Okay, so, so let's do a line for income. Okay, so it's going to start low, it's going to go up, and then it is going to come back down. Okay, so that's income. Okay, and then I'm going to do a line for cost. A line for cost starts up, okay, up high. It'll intersect there, come down, go back up. Okay, so that is cost. Okay, so let's kind of pick this apart. So if you are trying to maximize your profit, okay, then what you want to do is you want to make sure that you're not spending, right, costs more than you're making income. Okay, so you want the green line to be high. Okay, we like for the green line to be high because that means that more money is coming in. Okay, so if you are a factory and your location is making something like this happen, okay, where you're spending more than you're pulling in, then that is not going to be a good spot for your factory. Okay, so then that means that you're spending too much on raw materials or transportation costs or labor or things like that, and you don't have enough consumer demand. Okay, but, and that can also be true right here. Okay, maybe you're too far away. Okay, so if you're too far away, then something called distance decay can affect your profit. In fact, it can minimize your profit. And that's not good because remember, we're all about maximizing profit. We want to make the most money that we can make. Okay, so if you've got distance decay happening, okay, then that means you are too far from your consumer. Okay, your consumer has decided, nope, you're too far. I don't want to go all the way over there to that business when I can just go to this other business. Okay, so you're too far from your consumer. You don't want that to happen. Okay, so this is like another Goldilocks situation here. You want a situation like this, okay, where what you are spending cost is a lot less than what you're making, okay, income. Okay, so this means right here you're the perfect distance, okay, from your consumer. Okay, your consumer is still going to come see you and buy from you. Your consumer wants your product. Okay, and so you're because the consumer wants the product, they're going to spend money there, and you're going to be making more than what you're spending. Okay, so in Lucia's model, He's more concerned with distance. He doesn't want to be too far away. Okay, he wants to be close to his consumer because he wants to make the most money that he can make. Okay. Okay, so just to kind of sum up then our locational theories. Okay, remember we have Weber. Okay, his was all about, his was least cost theory. Okay, and remember Weber is all about the money. Okay, he wants to minimize how much he's spending so that he can maximize profit. Okay, then we had hoteling. Okay, and so remember with hoteling, his was locational interdependence. Okay, and so remember he was all about the consumers. Okay, this is where the ice cream guys are going to be right next to each other, trying to compete for consumers from each other. Okay, and then remember last we had Luche. Okay, so remember Luche was about zone of profitability. Okay, and so remember he was worried about the distance. I don't want to be too far from my consumer because then my consumer won't come buy from me. Okay, there you go. Locational theories.